Ms. Joan Pereira.
Thanks, Chairman. I have a clarification for SMS. The issue I highlighted for MND's consideration is not really one between neighbours. Rather, the issue is disamenities caused mostly by non-residents. And we know they are non-residents because we patrol the sky gardens or roof gardens nightly. I note that a committee looking into disputes will be formed, and I hope that the gating proposal that I made can be seriously considered, studied, and hopefully implemented. Thank you.
I thank Ms. Joan Pereira for her clarification. HDB has been working together with Ms. Joan Pereira and her team on the management of the sky gardens that she has talked about. And one of the considerations is the importance of keeping our HDB estates open in terms of their nature. I am also glad to update that we have been working not just HDB, but also with other agencies like MOM and NEA in doing joint operations to manage against safe distancing or safe management measure violations at these sky gardens. And my understanding is that the situation has come under control. We understand where Ms. Joan Pereira is coming from, and we'll continue to work with her to look for sustainable solutions.
Leader of Opposition.
Thank you, Chair. I thank the Minister for responding to some of my cuts. Just a few clarifications. First, on the priority schemes, I note that the current information provided by HDB does not detail whether the respective priority schemes have been fully allocated for a typical BTO exercise. And to that extent, for example, it is difficult to assess whether the current 30% threshold or priority for married couples with children is at the appropriate level, given particularly the recent demand in public housing. Can Minister share whether the HDB believes this can, for example, for married child priority scheme, whether that threshold can be raised? But more importantly, does it suggest from HDB's data that for the more recent BTO exercises, this rise is actually warranted? Because without that information, we really get to hear feedback from residents, as I'm sure Minister also would have received from newly married couples and couples with children, that they are unsuccessful repeatedly. So I think that clarity actually would be quite helpful. The second clarification pertains to the EIP. I welcome the announcement of the buyback option for EIP constrained households, so as to make things fairer for these Singaporeans. But I note that this position that was announced today was actually the original last resort solution that was put out by then MND Minister Mr. S. Dhanabalan when he introduced the policy in the late 1980s. Can I confirm if HDB had applied this last resort earlier, and if not, why hadn't it applied earlier? Because Minister in the late 80s already said that this was a last resort option to buy the property from the affected EIP household. Can I also confirm to that extent, actually I had asked a written question in July about how many times HDB had purchased an EIP constrained house, a EIP constrained flat, I beg your pardon, and the reply actually was specific to voluntarily surrendered flats. That's the reply that the ministry actually gave. So I'm not sure whether it was an answer to the same thing, whether the flat was actually purchased by the HDB in the first instance, as the HDB would have committed to do if there were EIP related constraints, or whether it had not actually it had not purchased any EIP affected flat previously. So has this actually been done before? Because the policy was already announced earlier. I can clarify. You can ask a subsequent question. I can clarify it. My third point really relates to the EIP data. I acknowledge Minister's point about the difficulty in coming up with a map which is consistent over time. I asked the question because of the previous EIP-related question, the Ministry actually provided the 5-yearly interval data. So naturally, I asked whether that data could be further clarified in those 5-yearly intervals. But I note Minister's point. And finally, I believe my cut on singles and whether the HDB would consider reducing the eligibility age for singles to buy a 2-room BTO flexi flat or a resale flat could be reconsidered.
Thank the Leader of the Opposition for sharing his immediate reaction to the change to the EIP, where we will introduce the buyback to support EIP-constrained families on a case-by-case basis. But let me first talk about the priority schemes. I said in the speech that we provide data for individual BTO launches. So let's say we launch in, say, a particular area, like Tengah. Each BTO launch, we put out a couple of locations and we'll say what kinds of housing typologies are available in each location. And we specify the application rates for each project at each launch on a daily basis. That will, in our view, give potential home buyers the most practical and meaningful data that they will then be able to use in determining whether to make an application for that flat in that location or not. So I think we provide that data not only for the location, but for each housing typology. So we think that the data we put out needs to be practical and meaningful for flat buyers. And Leader of the Opposition mentioned that you anecdotally hear of cases of people who cannot get flats. We have said that virtually all who apply as first-timers for non-mature estate BTO flats, virtually all on a third try they should be able to get. Of course, those who apply for balanced flats or flats in mature estates, particularly where the attributes are very attractive, demand will naturally be high, across all the possible priority schemes. And so for each launch, for each site, we have allocated quotas for each group, for example, for married children and their parents, for multi-gen, where relevant, for tenant priority scheme, for assist, which would be widowed or divorced second-timers with children. And the application rates will vary for a variety of reasons. Right? One, of course, because of the current pandemic situation where people are concerned about housing delays and more people put in applications earlier, or based on location and attributes. So some are extremely attractive and lots of people will apply for it. So I think in terms of the data we put out, we want it to be practical and useful for home buyers. And whether the married child priority scheme can be raised, in a way, when you talk about X number of DUs or units in any particular launch, in any particular location, it's almost like a zero-sum game. Because you have, say, 1,000 units, and you have certain percentage for married children, certain percentage for other groups, for seniors, based on typology. If you increase one group in terms of quota, then you must eat into other groups. And ultimately, the second-timers will be squeezed out. So we want to make sure that we provide a balance. HDB looks at all the data, not just for individual sites, but overall launches across years, and also looks at long-term demographic trends and data to decide whether we need to make any adjustments to the quotas and priority schemes. And therefore, we keep a very close eye on this. For the prime location public housing, if the leader of opposition recalls, we had made some adjustments to the MCPS by reducing the quota available to them by, if I recall, 5 percentage points. Because we considered it and we said that, yes, we want to ensure that children who want to live near their parents in the area can get access to some of these flats. But we reduced it because we had a bigger objective, or equally important objective, of allowing inclusion in these estates and allowing people who used to live in other parts of Singapore to also have a fair opportunity to buy a flat in some of these very prime locations. So that's first. On EIP, when EIP was introduced in 1989, the resale market was really nascent. The number of resale transactions back then pales in comparison to the resale market that we see today. And in fact, all the way to the year 2000, if my memory serves me right, people could surrender their flats to HDB for any reason, and not just because of buyback. And it took a period of time for the resale market to become mature in Singapore. And when the resale market became mature, HDB stopped the buyback option as a last resort. And then we put in the various measures that we put in place that I've articulated before, waiving EIP on an exceptional basis, giving home buyers more time to sell if they feel they're constrained, and so on. So that is my response to your question, if I got you right, in terms of when the buyback option was last used. Okay? And then you had asked a question about the PQ, the written PQ for data, and I explained that we received requests for significant data sets by the Leader of the Opposition. We had endeavored to give data that we were able to provide, and for the second PQ, there were constraints with regards to neighborhoods, neighborhood names, boundaries, and so on. It's all in the reply, and if the Leader of the Opposition looks at the Hansard and is not satisfied about the response in any way and needs more clarification, we welcome him to put forward a further request, and we'll clarify. On singles, the Senior Minister of State, Desmond, had explained that we want to be responsive to the evolving aspirations of all Singaporeans. A number of years ago, singles could not buy HDB BTO flats. By keeping an eye on how society is evolving and that more Singaporeans are either choosing to remain single as a matter of choice or becoming single because of circumstance. They have caregiving obligations and so on. That group is growing, and we wanted to provide for them. And hence, we made the decision to provide BTO eligibility for singles quite a number of years ago, or certainly less than 10 years ago. And along the way, we have adjusted the grants and made more flexibilities to accommodate singles and to provide for them. But every group that has eligibility for HDB BTO, there will always be constraints. So even for married families, there are income ceilings, right? There are different criteria, citizenship, household type. And then for singles, when they apply with their caregiving obligations and they put their parents as essential occupier, they can get housing, BTO, not just resale. Or if they're much older and their parents are no longer around and they want to have mutual care and support for single siblings living with each other, we also provide eligibility for them. So the Leader of Opposition earlier said that you wanted the priorities to be real priorities, not a gamble. You have high priority, but actually it's really just ballot and a gamble and more chances. As I said before, each group has a specific quota so that we make space for every group that has needs for housing. But if we provide absolute priority for certain groups, like you mentioned households, then even if you make adjustments for singles as you propose, it will not come to fruition because all their space will be taken up. So I think the reality that you now recognize also, the leader recognizes also, is that we will have to make adjustments along the way, but also balance the needs of different groups. All in. Thank you.
Leader of Opposition.
I'd like to thank the Minister for sharing that. With respect to the last point about eligibility for singles, I think I take the Minister's point about there are zero-sum realities to think about here. But I also wish to come back to the point that Minister made earlier about the number of flats the HDB is prepared to construct from 2021 to 2025. I think the number was 100,000, up to 100,000, sorry. In view of what I shared in my cut about the latest population census and the number of singles that has gone up from the age groups 25 to 29 and 30 to 34, has that information prompted a change in the HDB's thinking about its options for singles, which I acknowledge previously there weren't any, and these have been introduced. But in view of new information that is coming online through the census, as I explained, is there some scope to include the building of more flats for singles, for example, within that timeline that the Minister shared?
I thank the Leader of the Opposition for that. The census makes clear the social demographic trends in Singapore, including that of singles or even of delayed marriage and parenthood. But this is not something that is news to us. We've been looking at social demographic trends all the while, and therefore the moves on singles through the years, both in allowing them to apply for BTO flats, but also adjusting the grants eligibility along the way. So we will continue to look at our HDB eligibility criteria and make adjustments where we can. As both the Senior Minister of State, Desmond, and myself had said, our priorities are to make sure that we deliver the flats that people are waiting for, and also address the significant demand from newly formed households as well as nuclearizing households. In fact, in a paper that the Workers' Party itself put out in 2019, you cited data from, I believe it's Department of Statistics, showing the family size or the median family size per household coming down very sharply. And that, of course, comes through in the form of greater demands, both for married households, households with seniors, singles, and so on. All right? But as SMS Semen said, I think both sides of the house, we all want to provide for Singaporeans and meet as many needs as we can, and to help as many people achieve their home ownership aspirations as possible. We both want to do that. But we live in a situation where both land and resources pose real constraints. And in fact, if neither land nor resources were constrained, we want to meet everyone's needs all the time. But we'll have to make priorities for different groups based on income, based on nationality, based on number of chances they've got at owning a home, based on their family obligations, and then make some adjustments, helping those who may need more help and giving them more support. So I think that's where we are, and we continue to look at the needs of Singaporeans and the housing options that they have. Thank you.
Mr. Lim Biao Chuan.
Thank you, Speaker, for seeing my hand in the little corner where I was. Can I ask the Senior Minister of State, Ms. Sim Ann, about this Community Advisory Panel? Who is expected to be in this panel? Would it be community leaders? Would it be mediators? Would members of the public be involved in this panel? Also, what about other issues like second-hand smoking or hoarding? Would the SMS, Ms. Sim be able to clarify that? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lim Biao-chuan, for the clarification. The Community Advisory Panel on Noise, we intend to invite onto this panel community leaders who have experience in handling or mediating issues to do with noise in the neighborhood. And we also plan to have engagements and discussions where members of the public can also take part, because the idea is to formulate a set of norms or benchmarks that can be useful in mediating conflicts arising from noise, and also to guide our agencies in terms of their public education advisories. We are starting with noise because amongst the different kinds of neighbor disputes that I have raised, which have their roots in human behavior, neighbor noise is the most numerous, and we would like to gain more experience from using this community advisory panel to form these norms and then work in concert with enhanced community dispute resolution mechanisms and gain some experience from that before we apply it to other forms of neighbor disputes. Thank you.
So Louis Chua.
Thank you, Chairman. I've just got two clarifications. The first is regarding the BTO card that I have. It's really whether or not we could set aside the minimum target percentage of the flats to have the shorter wait times. So instead of basically the build to order process, we really have one which is built ahead of order, considering that we do have a very significant demand-supply imbalance in the market today with very high oversubscription rates for the BTO flats. The second is in relation to resale subsidies and ensuring affordability. As it is, there are already a lot of public housing flats today in areas where only the better off can afford them. I spoke about the $261 million flats, but if we look at the median resale prices for, say, a 5-room flat in places such as Bukit Merah, Queenstown, Toa Payoh, these range from 800 to 900,000. So what is it that the ministry would be looking into to ensure that it is not only the better off that can afford a flat in these places? Thank you.
The member asked if more shorter waiting time flats can be built. The answer is that we are doing everything we can to do so. The reason why flats have shorter waiting times, and in the case of the most recent launch, two in Yishun, if I'm not wrong, it's 2 years plus you get the flat. That is because the land was available. We were able to carry out the very significant land preparation and infrastructure development to enable that those two projects to be launched ahead of time, ahead of our BTO launch, so that when people actually select the flat, the time to them collecting the keys is much less. But that requires us to not just do land preparation, and that work is very significant. You have to clear encumbrances, you have to do land preparation, you may need to clear the land, you may need to provide the services, you need to provide the roads. That work takes time. And Singapore is land scarce. And so where does this land come from to meet all these needs or growing needs, to which the Workers' Party would like to add more demand, which we'll look at. But we'll have to take land from greenfield sites. And the Workers' Party has said, please keep as much greenery as possible, but some of these sites we will have to use. So please support when the studies are out. So some are greenfield sites. Some of them are brownfield sites, which means they have been cleared of their previous use and the land is ready to be developed. But often brownfield sites are still being used, whether they're used for businesses and industry or used for nurseries or used for farming or used for retail or whatever. And we have to give the user of that land the time to be able to clear out, and then we take over. And if there is a delay in that, that will affect our land preparation, that will affect our launch, that may cause delay to our housing plan. So to plan for BTO program requires many years of planning ahead of time. And wherever possible, we will advance it in order to allow shorter waiting time flats to be launched. In addition to that, as I said in my speech earlier, we have both sale of balance flats options, as well as the open selection of flats where we put the balance units from all over the island and allow people to select. And in fact, one has come up starting this month, and look forward to residents who need immediate housing to apply for those. As for affordability of resale flats, there are certain areas which are very popular. The flats, the resale prices are higher. But part of it is in the last year or so, because of COVID, because of concerns about construction delays, coupled with the ongoing social demographic trend of household formation and smaller households, resulted in greater demand for resale flats, particularly in some areas which are very popular. In fact, for the last 6 out of 7 years, the resale prices have been trending downwards, right? We provide generous subsidies for those buying resale flats, up to $180,000, depending on income level, to help with the affordability of resale flats. But we also have put in place the prime location public housing flat to ensure that in some very prime locations, eventually when they become resold on the market and become resale flats themselves, we have enough mechanisms and levers to try to ensure that they remain affordable, not just at first launch, but over time.
Gan tiempo.
Thanks, Chairman. 我想问 in Mandarin， 我想问 SMS 建物发展局会根据哪一些因素优先考量一个地方商用电的种类 ？Thank you.
Mr. Chairman in Mandarin， 感谢严议员的提问。至于这个祖屋区的商店，它应该具备什么样的特色？我们现在目前还正在进行与公众的咨询活动。不过，根据我们目前所进行的这些咨询活动，已经有几个特色或者几个要求是比较明显的。来参与我们的交流会的公众呢，都表示希望看到祖屋区的商店的商品和服务必须要符合居民的日常需求，而且他们也希望看到这些商店它的种类能够同祖屋区的这个氛围是相匹配的，而且他们也希望能够看到多一些特色商品或者是一些老字号，希望这些老字号呢能够传承下去。他们也希望这些商店呢，它是可以富有这个人情味的。那么与此同时，也有公众表示，也希望看到祖屋区商店有创新的一面，希望能够看到一些新的一些商品，给祖屋区的居民一些新鲜的一些购物的体验。总而言之， 目前来讲，来参与交流会的公众都表示，对于组屋区商店的种类、商品、服务，希望看到有一定的管控和整理。那么我们会根据这些反馈，那么继续的进行交流。那么我们在经过这个分析和整理之后，我们再来制定要如何的提升邻里商店的这个购物体验。谢谢。
Ms. Mariam Jaffa.
Thank you, Chairman. Two questions for Minister. One on the EIP. Wonderful news. On the flip side of my question, the group that actually cannot, due to EIP, can't get flats or rent or buy flats nearer to their parents, is there something that the Ministry is also thinking to do for them? And secondly, on the green buildings, great to hear about the grants for retrofits for being extended to residential buildings too. But of course, HDB is the primary volume driver here. And I say this in, can you also give an update on the roadmap for HDB to retrofit its large base of buildings, as well as new buildings to become greener? I say this knowing that it has a lot of socioeconomic impacts, so I don't take it lightly, but it would be great if you can share something on the roadmap. Thank you.
I take the second question first. In the joint segment on the Green Plan, I had shared, albeit briefly, about the efforts that we've been undertaking under HDB Green Towns. So for existing flats, we have committed to and place solar panels on 8,400 on the roofs of 8,400 blocks, and have done so for about 2,700, which is roughly around 30%. And we aim to put solar panels on as many HDB rooftops as possible, subject to studies like loading, technical considerations, whether it gets adequate exposure to the sun, and so on. And for new BTO, to make every HDB rooftop solar panel ready, so that when the Solar Nova contracts come their way, they're ready to be fitted out with solar panels. The rainwater harvesting pilot under the HDB Green Print in both Ang Mo Kio and Yihua have shown that they're best done for new BTO. Likewise for the pneumatic waste management system. But for existing BTO flats, we are piloting cool paints on the surfaces of existing HDB blocks to reflect more heat away and to make the ambient environment in the homes more livable. And in that regard, help families manage the cost of keeping their homes cool at the hottest times of the day or year. And of course, making every effort to green our HDB towns as much as possible, and hence the 1 million trees, getting heavily involved, getting people involved in the HDB towns to plant as many trees in the town as possible. So these are just some of the many things we're doing to retrofit or to help our existing estates to be more green and sustainable. On EIP, our announcement focuses on those who are EIP constrained, and despite marketing their flats for up to 6 months at reasonable prices, they're not able to sell and can show to HDB their efforts. And so HDB has now one more tool in the toolkit to help some of these families address their personal pain points in order for society as a whole in Singapore to understand and support the policy of EIP to keep our estates diverse, ethnically diverse. The member's point is about the reverse. People who want to buy a resale flat in an area that's near their parents' homes, but are facing a constraint because the seller cannot sell to them. In those cases, again, I would say put an appeal through. Put an appeal through, let HDB take a look, because it works both ways, right? They cannot buy, the seller also wants to sell. And then we'll have a look globally at both buyer and seller's situation.
Mr. Saktiandi Supa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I got one clarification with regards to the EIP, and it's addressed to the Minister. First of all, thank you for the explicit move on the EIP. It's been a long time coming to some extent to help families or individuals who can't sell. My first clarification is about the fair offer. In what way can Minister reassure sellers involved in this EIP case on a case-by-case basis? Because yes, indeed, residents have suggested this as well, as in buyback from HDB. But how can Minister reassure that the price will not be too low when the valuation comes in, and what is the valuation level that will be coming up? Second question is, sometimes the seller could be seniors who stay in some of these old mature flats, and they stay alone. How can HDB help them to compile these documents for submission? I know property agents may be involved, but in some ways, how can we inform some of these senior sellers with regards to this documentation? Because it looks quite onerous in terms of collecting listings for 6 months and all that. Thank you, Minister.
As I said, the HDB, when considering this buyback option for the seller, will appoint a professional valuer. It will look at the inputs and then make a fair offer, taking into account the specific circumstances that the family is in. I mean, certainly we can't match the highest possible resale prices in the area, all right? But we'll make sure the offer is fair. The buyer will be told, will be given time to consider, and he can, of course, write to HDB if he feels that he disagrees with the quantum. But that is one out of, that's an offer that HDB makes after taking in inputs. On seniors living alone, and if they face these difficulties, please ask them to approach the HDB branch office, and we'll do what we can to support them. If they face difficulties carrying out the process in order to avail themselves of some of these support mechanisms. Okay.
Mr. Melvin Yong.
Thank you, Chairman. I have two clarifications for MOS Tan Kiat Hao. I think the first, today NTUC has formed company training committees with some FM companies. Through these CTCs, we are working very closely with the companies to transform their business operations and upskill their workers, achieving win-win outcomes. So my first clarification is whether MND and BCA will work with NTUC and BATU, that is our Building, Construction and Timber Industries Employees Union, to reach out to more FM companies to establish CTCs with them. My second clarification is whether the FM sector, both employers as well as workers, could benefit from adopting PWM with its wage and skills ladders so that we can better attract, retain and develop local professionals in this growing sector.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Melvin Yong had two clarifications. I'll answer the first one first about working with NTUC and specifically Batu in terms of upskilling and raising the level of professionalism as well as wage and career progression for our firstly management workers. The answer is certainly yes. We're happy to work together with NTUC as well as our partners in Batu to do so. In fact, this is something that we're working very closely with all partners, industry partners, companies, employers, as well as our union leaders. Especially on the modality of company training CTCs or company training committees, certainly is one modality that we work closely with the union leaders as companies on. In broadly speaking, I would say that we encourage the FM and the MA workers to go for training and accreditation to raise their professionalism and improve their competency, because that's the sustainable way for wage progression and career pathways in the sectors. And we are actually very happy that, very heartened actually, that many companies and workers have actually come on board many of the training programs conducted by either our BC Academy or the Singapore International Facility Management Association, SIFMA, and the Association of Property and Facility Managers, APFM, and the Association of Strata Managers, ASM. So we're working together, and we welcome a tripartite approach. To your second question about the progressive wage model within the FM sector, I understand that the NTUC friends are working very closely with Ministry of Manpower. You have raised a proposal to look at the progressive wage model for workers in the strata management sector. And we are working very closely with MOM to look at the scope as well as the merits of the issue. So we look forward to continue working with NTUC colleagues on this.
Yepon Weng, keep it short, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two clarifications. Can services in the community care apartments be extended to seniors living in existing HDB estates? And two, why are first-timer families not eligible for the Fresh Start housing scheme? Thank you.
Chairman, I thank the member for the question. The CCA is a new concept and we need to evaluate the pilots to see how it helps in the well-being, the physical and the social-emotional well-being of the seniors. So we will also take the member's suggestion. But that said, today if you look at MOH, they also have services that look after the frail, for example, the home and the daycare. At the same time, for those who need social support, we have the befrienders. And as we move forward, there will be leveling up of the elder care centers to see how they can better serve as a point of contact for seniors in every community, providing active aging and befriending and many more services that they can be a point of contact. But we are encouraged by the support and also the responses from the public about the CCA. So we will closely study its impact and we really want to make it work so that we can give opportunities for our seniors to age in place.
Minister.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to make a factual clarification. I misspoke earlier. In response to Mr. Louis Chua, I said that the resale grants up to 180,000, it should be 160,000. And in relation to Leader of Opposition, when I mentioned the MCPS adjustments for the first PLH and second PLH, it was 30 to 20%. So it was a cut of 10% rather than 5%.
It's Chong Ki-hyung.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Minister Desmond Lee, for buying back flats from EIP constrained owners under certain conditions. I have the following clarifications. Would these flats be added to PPHS or public rental scheme to meet rental demand for singles or families in the eligible minority ethnic groups? My second clarification is for MOS Faisal. Could MOS provide an update on the current situation with EIP constrained owners? Has the number of appeals increased? Thank you.
Or flats that are bought back, we are likely to prioritize them for home ownership, put subsidies and put them out as balanced flats to meet the housing demand. But depending on circumstances and on location, we may also consider them for PPHS and or other users, subject, of course, to the EIP.
Ms. Cheryl Chan. Oh, Mr. Faisal.
For the number of appeals, we have seen the number of appeals going down over the years from 2019 to today. So with these changes, we hope we can support the homeowners better.
Thank you. Ms. Cheryl Chan. Can keep it very, very short.
Chairman, because I'm also aware of guillotine time, so I shall file my clarifications in subsequent PQs instead.
Okay.
Would you like me to withdraw?
Yes, you would like to withdraw your amendment?
Thank you, Chairman. I would like first start and like to thank Minister Desmond Lee.
Yes, please proceed.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. I want to begin by thanking Minister Desmond Lee, Minister Indrani, whom we missed, but I'm sure she's been preparing for the COS as well, SMS Cement, MOS Faisal, MOS Tan Kiat Hao, and the entire MND team who has been working very hard to address all the varying topics that we've raised. I think, housing policies and land planning topics are complex topics for the fact that they have a lot of stakeholders that they interact with, and also because they address genuine needs on a day-to-day basis. So I think it's not an easy balance, but recognizing this, I think the ministry has been trying their very best to help many people on the ground and based on all the feedbacks that we've received. I hope that we can continue refining the policies over time in order to make sure that we can strengthen the schemes that's available so that it really helps people. And last but not least, but I think it's important that we continue engaging citizens and partners to be able to shape the future Singapore so that we can truly have a sustainable, resilient and livable city. And together we can build a home for all. Thank you. And Chairman, with that, I wish to withdraw leave to withdraw my amendment.
Is the Honourable Member given leave to withdraw the amendment? I think leave of the majority is given. The amendment is withdrawn. The question is that a sum of $3,426,272,700 for head T stand part of the main estimates. As many as of that opinion say aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is that a sum of $7,806,220,000 for head T stand part of the development estimates. As many as of that opinion say aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.